Okay, Omari and Nadir, this one's for you. As I've been reading your number 26, your responses, um, what became clear is we need to do some more analysis of the techniques because when you go to now you try it, your job is to employ some of the techniques, and the questions are designed for you to, in the writer's craft, to have you be aware of some of the techniques, and there are some other ones that they don't pull your attention to. You definitely are responsible for them, and now you'll be responsible for these. You're going to be trying some of these techniques, maybe not all of them, but I want to make you aware of the power of the person's writing. All right, let's go to paragraph one. Okay, this is technique. First, he uses a familiar reference plus alliteration to get people's attention. Read between the lines is contrasted with write between the lines. That in of itself gives a little attention, also familiarity. Read, write, a little difference. Then there is appeal to the value. This is so important because he comes back to it. He's appealing to the value efficient reading. Okay, and when you're doing persuasion, you want to have it in your mind what the audience values. What are some of their important values? Because if you can connect what you're proposing to things they value, then you have a winner. All right. The next thing is an emotional appeal. He uses several of these. Loss if you don't accept his proposal. Loss is the connection to the emotion sadness. Okay, so it's an emotional appeal. And he says what is persuasive goal, and this persuasive goal is for you to mark up your book. All right. Now let's go to paragraph two. All right. In paragraph two, he also has an emotional appeal. He contrasts love. That is, it's not mutilation, it's love. In fact, he also here is answering an objection that someone may see marking up a book as mutilating. So he is flipping it. And not only is he saying that it's not mutilation, he's in fact proposing that it is a love. All right. And he's repeating or extending his persuasive goal to mark up the book. So that's two paragraphs. All right. Now, let's go to paragraph three. In paragraph three, he really wants to establish his credibility. Um, this is perhaps the objection that could kill him right out of the box. So he wants to address it. And he says he wouldn't advocate anything immoral. If the book doesn't belong to you, to a library or something like that, don't mark it up. That kind of credibility objection, that he is someone who's less than credible, is can kill any argument. Can No matter how good the arguments are, it'll kill the persuasive task. Think about it. If someone's trying to persuade you to do something and you don't trust them, you don't think they're moral, upright, upstanding, you don't want anything they have to say. He also answers another objection, and this is objection based on cost, because part of his guide is you just buy some other books and don't mark up ones that don't belong to you, and they don't cost you much money. So that's the cost objection that he's answering. You can probably have reprints of the classics for $1. Then he also states his goal, his persuasive goal. So notice in the first three paragraphs, he's stated and restated his persuasive goal three times, although slightly differently each time. All right, let's go to paragraph four. Now, I want you to find some of these. I want you to use this as a tool to go and find these in the book, because these are some of the techniques I want you to be able to use in your both in your Now You Try It essay and also in your Columbus essay. Okay, so now in number four is where he begins to contrast buying versus really owning, having it versus really having it. Okay, he then this is what he's going to build on the whole time. This construct of you have it, but you don't really own it. And so this is really laying the foundation for it. He's already had a value appeal. He's already established his credibility and got rid of that objection. Now he also has another emotional appeal. That is, the emotional appeal here is it gets into your bloodstream. This is when he's, of course, talking about the beefsteak, but the whole piece is this really gets into your bloodstream. Real ownership is stuff that is really into your bloodstream. Okay. He also says, to do any good. So this is another emotional appeal, because the opposite of doing good is what? Doing bad. So to do any good, it has to get into your bloodstream. And of course, this is where he uses the comparison, the metaphors, very powerful ones, because the clothes and the furniture, owning again versus wearing it. Wearing it is like getting into your bloodstream, where you really have real ownership, okay, not just having ownership. And so people can put themselves into it. If they relate to clothes, they can relate to the difference between having it feel good on them and having it in the closet. Same thing, furniture, being able to sit on it and enjoy it versus just having it sit and be covered in plastic. And of course, eating food, he says beefsteak, could be anything, so that it actually does a body good. It gets you into your body and does a body good. And that's where he does to do any good piece. So they're powerful metaphors because they're three different ones. One having to do with food, the other having to do with clothes and furniture, so that people could be transformed and transplanted kind of into those things, and therefore strengthens his piece of real ownership. Okay, now let's go to number 4. All right, before I do that, I want to go back and let you know how often the emotional appeals have been there. Let's go back up to 3, just by way of review. So he's answering the credibility piece. Doesn't so much in paragraph 3 do an emotional appeal. I missed that. Oh yes, I'm glad I went back. This is so critical in a persuasive essay. This one here, where he says we got let you decide. He lets the reader know that he's in control. This is, in fact, an emotional appeal, but a very clever one and also very important. When you're trying to persuade someone, nobody wants to be persuaded. That is, they want to believe and know that they are in charge and they can decide. They're not being manipulated. You're not in charge of them. They are in charge. And so he reminds the reader, if you decide. This is so important. Okay. Glad I went back to 3. All right, let's go back and review 2 very quickly, and you'll see the emotional appeal, love instead of mutilation there. And so, an emotional appeal and 1, loss. Okay, so in paragraph 1, in paragraph 2, in paragraph 3, emotional appeal, you're in charge. That's power. And the other ones, there's some ones to move away from, sadness. This one is power. Okay, all right, now let's go to, I think we're ready for number 6. Okay. All right, let's show you how he went from 4. Okay, you remember 4 is where he breaks down and begins to do with buying and having versus really owning it, and getting into your bloodstream and allowing you to go in through your imagination with clothes and furniture or eating some food. Now, in paragraph 5 is where he then extends this. Okay, but he also has emotional appeal, possessing beauty. Okay, so you're owning it, but real ownership is possessing the beauty of it. And he so says beauty of the book, the real beauty of the book is deep understanding. Okay, now this also is a credibility appeal, because establishing his credibility, because this is someone who doesn't want to mutilate books. This is someone who really loves authors and loves books. Okay, and you remember he's already said this is not mutilation, this is love. So he returns as someone who loves authors and loves books. All right, and he also protects the person, just like he did earlier by saying you decide. He protects the person by saying confusion leads. It's not the person's fault. It's confusion's fault. Okay, so if you got a little mixed up, if what I'm saying applies to you, that you have versus own, then it's confusion's fault, not your fault. Okay, so it's critical to reduce the resistance on the part of the audience that he's trying to convince. Whenever you're trying to convince them, you want to know that there will be resistance if people, just as if they know you want to decide for them, there will be resistance. They will also have resistance if they think that you're blaming them or if they blame themselves. So this way, he actually gives them a way out so that they don't blame themselves. Got it? Now, coming right up to the top here, uh, and if he contrasts that you may be the kind that has the book, possesses it, like your rich dad, may have given it to you or using the money from your rich dad or rich somebody. But now, there's a contrast between a rich dad and a rich mind. And of course, where is he going? Which one is the beautiful one? The rich mind, right? The rich dad may give you a reverence for paper or for the printer in terms of how you like the paper being printed and how you like it looking and the binding and all of that stuff like that is a reverence for the paper and the printer. He contrasts that with reverence for genius of the author. Of course, now which one will you choose? All right. So he's working it here. I want you to know he's working it. All right, now let's go to paragraph 6. All right, in paragraph 6, this is where he introduces another element here, moving a little bit away from emotional appeals that are directly to the technique of categorization. There are three kind of people who own books. Now, for a person that does categorization, what we associate with them is intelligence, meta thoughtful. They're someone who surveyed the field and they have a sense of that there are these kinds of book owners. Okay, so again, this by going to categorization, his credibility goes up. We begin to associate him with someone who's very intelligent, and boom. And he then puts in again the real ownership. The line in that paragraph: "This man owns books." Okay, not the one who just with of those three categories, the one who has it, who wears it and is tattered and really gets into the book. That man owns the book. The other ones don't own it. So you see, he's continuing this theme of ownership and real ownership throughout. So I want you to know the consistency which he has that real ownership going through. Okay, and if we click back to 4. Oops, not that one. That's where I want to go. If we go to 5, you'll see the. All right. Okay. You'll get the rich dad versus the rich mind. You get real ownership in terms of associated with possessing beauty, which is emotional appeal. You get buying versus owning. That's where he really introduces buying versus owning in paragraph 4. So it continues in 4, 5, and 6. Okay, the real ownership issue. So notice the power of repetition, although it doesn't sound like he's repeating it the same way. All right, let's go to paragraph 7. He also answers objections. Okay, that is, some people are like, but those people who's like, but a book is a beautiful thing. And so he says, sure, this is again his credibility, and that is, I love things that are beautiful, and I want to preserve those things that are beautiful, that are made for beauty. Of course, he's saying now the book is not made for beauty, and if you have one that's made for beauty, cool, okay, but then buy a cheap one, okay. The He has this famous book reference in Paradise Lost. This, of course, increases his credibility, and it's also an emotional appeal, because it's if you have a first edition of Paradise Life, because it's a famous book, they kind of get to it there. All right, let's move on to number 8. Number 8. All right, now. he now calls beauty, he goes from the beauty to the soul of a book. I want you to begin to understand how the language is working, okay? The beauty of the ownership is beauty. Now beauty shifts to the soul of the book is what he looks at. And then he uses great composers, mark up their scores. Okay. Now he's doing a comparison here. Here's another comparison between great composers and what he's suggesting. Great composers, mark up their stuff. All right. And then he repeats the objection mentioned in paragraph 2. Okay, because you remember in paragraph 2, he talks about you can get it cheaply. That is when he says you don't mark up the library, you can get it cheaply over in paragraph 2. Well, he comes back here and repeats that you don't mark up. You can get a cheap one to mark it up. All right, that's the comparison here. Also, this respect for the author. He's not talking about himself. This is the respect for the writer of the book. The great composers show their reverence, okay, for of the composers by marking up their scores. So by comparison, great readers show respect for the author by marking up the book. Okay, it's an implied comparison. That's what metaphor does, and it's communicating in that way. All right, let's go to paragraph 9. All right, now he goes back to the original value. Remember that value? Efficient reading, good reading. That was over in the very first paragraph. He says he's going to appeal to a value, and that value is efficient reading. So he goes back over here and number 9 and reiterates good reading. And he shifts, though. Now he calls it active reading. This is a powerful setup because what's the opposite of an active reader? Okay, if you're not an active reader. So that's paragraph 9. Paragraph 10, great books require what kind of reading? Active reading. So you understand the transitions here. He introduces the term active reading to talk about the marking up the book, okay? And so, and now great books. What is this? All books? No. So, Nadir's, you want to read prose, and you want to read fiction and want to read it, easily, then please do, and you don't have to mark those up. Just the great books, okay? So let's go to paragraph number 11. Now he uses a famous active reader, okay? And this is again using a famous reference. He's also already talked about 3 things that are famous. He talked about the Paradise Lost, the book. He talked about great composers and mentions the names there. Now he mentions the university president of University of Chicago. Why is that important? Because he's saying somebody else already does that. Somebody else is already important, already famous, who's already busy, does what he's saying. So you join in. It's a powerful persuasive appeal. You're not asking the person to be the trailblazer. You ask them to join a movement that's already started. Okay, and again, this is a famous active reader. He's carrying it on there. And so again, he's gone from not appealing to the value of being an efficient reader, and establishing himself as a lover of books, establishing himself as a wonderful, owning, except just having and possessing, and gotten to where now you're an active reader, because now he's going to explain to you how to be the best active reader. Okay, now that's just through paragraph 11. I hope this helps you see some of the technique. Okay, so when you are doing now you try it, I want you to employ some of these techniques. You don't have to employ all of them in the same way or in the same paragraph, and still I want you to review this so that you know how to do this. You know how to state your your persuasive goal early. You know how to use something to get someone's attention. You also know how to appeal to the value that you think your audience has, a high or key value there. You want to establish your credibility, which he does, I think, in number three, but also begins to address an objection very early on, and again restates first three paragraphs. He restates his objectives, and then in paragraph three, he works to establish his credibility, which actually is not a logical objection, but it is one of the most powerful objections that you have to answer. So you have to figure out how to establish your credibility there. And you see, he doesn't do it just by quoting and giving his resume and that kind of thing like that. All right. Now, let's look at another thing that he sets up that's very, very subtle, okay, throughout this piece. If you don't mark up your book as he's suggesting, look at what, by the time you get to paragraph 11, haven't even gotten the rest of them, this is what he says you are. You're not the most efficient reader. You're confused. You don't really own the book. You just accept superficial ownership. You probably are just superficially collecting the books using your rich dad's money. You're a deluded owner of the material book, okay? Not the real book, not the soul of the book. You miss the real beauty of the book. You don't get to the soul of the book. You don't pay respect to the genius of the author. You may not even read great books. And if so, you don't get the most out of them. And you go to sleep on your books. You're not an active reader. Those are the subtle pieces. See if you can find those, if you can pick those up, okay? All right. All right. We're going to call this a wrap for right now. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and understand the depth in which we want you to be to go back to understand the writer and to begin to practice putting some of these things in your writing. Thanks. Take care.